Previously in the complete creation.
What they are saying is that all of the mountain ranges on Earth, the Rockies, the Appalachians, the Swiss Alps, the Andes, the Himalayas, and yes, even all the mountains on the east coast of Canada, all rose up at the same time. On the east coast of Canada, it would have been during this worldwide mountain building event when all of the major mountain ranges on Earth rose up at the same time that tilted the 20,000 feet of layers Hello, and thank you for once again joining me for the next part in this exhaustive series looking at the creation-evolution debate. We've spent a lot of time looking at the polystrate fossils of Joggins in Nova Scotia and some time at the geology. Now, polystrate fossils can relate to a lot of other fossil and geological discoveries in surprising ways, and reveal a stunning amount of information often overlooked by paleontologists and geologists who are looking at the evidence of their specific expertise. One example is fossil dinosaur footprints. I've had the privilege of studying fossil dinosaur footprints all over North America. Here's a cast of one. It looks like a giant chicken track. Usually when you find one fossil dinosaur track, you find at least hundreds of them. Often they will be found in multiple layers, like the Paluxy River in Glen Rose, Texas. Here, Aaron Judkins and myself found a dinosaur footprint trample site that had not previously been documented. It was several feet below the main dinosaur track layer, which is literally world famous. And we're going to come back and visit that world famous dinosaur track layer over and over again. In fact, I'll spend at least one entire lecture, possibly two or more, just on the fossil footprints found there, such as the fossil human footprints found among the fossil dinosaur tracks. Under them, and in them. But we'll come back to that. At this particular site, there were so many dinosaur tracks all trampled upon one another that it was difficult to distinguish between them. It included this whopper of a tridactyl track some 32 inches across. But I digress. For the moment, I want to focus on the fact that there are multiple layers of dinosaur footprints and that this is common. The technical term for fossil footprints is ichnofossils, and that term applies to any fossil footprints of any creature. Dinosaur ichnofossils are invariably found in what are interpreted by evolutionist paleontologists as tidal flats. In fact, off the top of my head, I can't think of any dinosaur fossil footprints that are in rock layers not called tidal flats by the paleontologists. Now, there may be some out there, but I'm not aware of any such claims. And ironically, I would agree with their interpretation on that count. In Wyoming, in 2001, a team of researchers discovered what they believed to be the fossil footprints of a dinosaur that was walking along. It began to wade and then swim in deeper water. The footprints went from deep, full-footed prints to toes only to claw scrapes only, to the trail disappearing completely. Then graduate student Deborah Mickelson made this excellent drawing that I do like so much. Her drawing didn't just show some of the evidence in easy to understand form, it also told a story. She showed the dinosaur wading deeper and deeper into the water until it was completely buoyed up and swimming, perhaps to hunt for fish or something. I agree wholeheartedly with their interpretation of the trail of footprints. This was a dinosaur that was walking along and then became buoyed up in deeper and deeper water until it was swimming. However, as much as I truly do appreciate Mickelson's drawing, this depiction is actually very inaccurate. Consequently, this story as told is invalidated because the story does not match the actual evidence. In a 2001 technical paper published in Paleos, where Mickelson and team described the site at which these tracks were found, they used the terms tidal flats that were thought to be totally marine in origin. And it should be noted that these alleged tidal flats in which you find dinosaur ichnofossils, they tend to be huge, provincial in size. Often those layers can be followed across state or provincial lines. This was no small tidal flat. Now this, of course, comes as no surprise to young Earth creationists. But take a look again at Mickelson's story in picture form. There is no tidal flat depicted here. This is not what they found at the site. So I took the liberty of correcting Mickelson's drawing by simply drawing the sediments as the tidal flats that they are. The drawing is now more scientifically accurate in depicting the find and the site. As a result, the interpretation becomes obvious. The dinosaur didn't wade out into deeper water. The dinosaur was walking on soft mud, apparently with little to no water on top. In the time that it took the dinosaur to walk a few steps, the water rose deep enough that the dinosaur was forced to swim. This is what the evidence shows, and this is surprisingly common to see in fossil footprints within the fossil record. The evidence matches what we would expect from tidal cycling during a global flood. Catastrophe, not long and slow geological processes. It does not match dinosaurs wading down into the water from the beach. The evidence does not support deep time. But this is not the only time you will see dinosaur tracks influenced by flowing water in tidal flats. This beautiful slab with a trail of dinosaur footprints is on display at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, Alberta, Canada. Now, while I obviously disagree with the evolutionary interpretations presented at the Royal Tyrrell, I do still strongly recommend you visit the museum. The evidence for creation and catastrophe is profound and on display throughout this beautiful museum. So, this particular slab has beautifully preserved fossil wave ripples all across it, indicating water moving in this direction. Here are 4 dinosaur tracks and the approximate walking direction, walking at almost right angles to the apparent water current. Notice also the direction the feet are pointing in for each step. The dinosaur is doing an awful lot of walking with its feet turned sideways. Makes sense, though, if the dinosaur was walking through fast-moving water. But this slab is part of a layer of rock considered to be tidal flats. Interestingly, the question about how footprints can be preserved in fast-moving water are partially answered with this slab. The dinosaur was obviously fighting fast-moving water while it was making the footprints. Yet the fast-moving water did not destroy the tracks. I stopped in Grande Cache, Alberta back in 2010 to carry out some more research on fossil dinosaur tracks. A massive coal mining operation there exposed countless fossil dinosaur tracks, both sauropod trackways, which have feet like an elephant, and the three-toed dinosaurs. Now, they may not look like much, but all of these depressions are fossil dinosaur tracks. This is a trail of fossil sauropod tracks going off into the distance. Now, as you can see, tectonic upheaval took all these rock layers and tilted them up to near vertical, up to 80-degree angles. There was a layer of coal as well, but that has been stripped away during the mining operations. But as you can see, the layers are incredibly huge. But that's just what we see that's been exposed by the mining. Now, I don't know how big these layers are, but I'm sure that if you followed them, they would go on for many, many miles, probably covering a large chunk of the province and probably to other provinces in the country as well. All of these layers are believed to have been initially laid down flat, horizontal. In geology, this is called the principle of original horizontality. It's a given assumption. So you have these massive tidal flats, and notice the prolific wave ripples on multiple layers. Notice the copious numbers of dinosaur tracks. Also on multiple layers. These impressions left in the rocks were fossil trees which were removed during the excavations, but left impressions behind in the layers. Notice how the trees all seem to be pointing in the same direction, or at right angles to the same direction. This is indicative of flowing water, current moving the trees into position. This direction also happens to be aligned with the predominant direction of flow indicated by the wave ripples. Now, normally, when you get layer upon layer of fossil dinosaur tracks like this, it is often interpreted to be seasonal dinosaur migrations. During one rainy season, a new layer of mud was washed in and the dinosaurs were running across it during their biannual migration. The next season saw a new layer of mud on top of that, and the dinosaurs were once again running across the flats during their return migration. Now, that's fair enough to suggest, but there are numerous problems with this hypothesis. First and foremost, those layers containing the dinosaur tracks are agreed upon by pretty much everybody to be tidal flats. Tides are not seasonal. We get a tide roughly every 12 hours. You'll get 58 of them in a 30-day month. If you account for tidal fluctuations and varying water levels, these tidal flats were most likely laid down about 12 to 48 hours apart. There are no seasons here, in stark contrast to the argument that multiple layers of dinosaur tracks represent years. Those layers probably represent hours to days at most. They are tidal flats. You don't get seasonal flats. But an intriguing phenomenon came up as this kindly young geologist took me around the mine. We kept seeing these strange depressions in the layers. And when we first saw them, and we saw a lot of them, they were all high up in the cliff and inaccessible. There was all kinds of them. And we kept looking at them and asking, well, what is that? What are those? We couldn't even venture a guess until we finally came across one at ground level. It was the young geologist who pointed out what it was, not I. He pointed out it was a coalified fossil tree trunk. Polystrate fossil trunks by the dozens were penetrating multiple layers of dinosaur tracks. But it gets better. I noticed that the stumps were hollow, like the lycopods of Joggins. Now, I couldn't excavate, so I couldn't identify the specific type of plant, but I did find other plant fragments in the layers that were from lycopods. So there's a good chance that that's what it was. But the real surprise was that there were dozens of polystrate fossil stumps buried upside down. These are the depressions left behind by the roots, which were dug up when they excavated the coal. The roots were coming up and going into the coal seam, which was on top. So once again, if we were to take the arguments of deep time advocates, who argue that these are stumps buried where they grew, they match all the criteria for being buried in situ. The roots were all in the same horizon, which happened to be a coal seam, which deep time advocates would contend was originally a swampy soil. The stumps were vertical, cutting through multiple layers. It was just inconvenient for the in situ theory that they were buried upside down, because as we already discussed, trees do not grow upside down. It was also inconvenient to the migrating dinosaur trackways theory that these polystrate stumps were cutting through multiple layers of dinosaur tracks. Clearly, there was not even seasons involved here, because those stumps would rot off in a season or two and not stay vertical to be buried. Now, how do you get dozens of stumps buried in multiple layers upside down, with dinosaurs being able to run across several of the layers it transects? I haven't got a clue. But I can tell you one thing. It sure didn't take even years, or tens of years, or hundreds, thousands, nor millions of years. It was a catastrophic event, is what it was. Now, I've had to deal with multiple incredibly arrogant, condescending anti-creationists attempt to question and refute the creationists using fossil dinosaur tracks. Now look, I'm all for questioning the creationists, questioning anything I say. Hey, search for yourself and see if what I'm telling is the truth or not. Go to Grand Cache, Alberta, and see the evidence firsthand for yourself. Don't take my word for it. But no, the anti-creationists won't do that. They instead choose to hide behind the anonymity of the internets and mock using topics they clearly know nothing about. So, the anti-creationists point to fossil dinosaur tracks in the fossil record and point out that we creationists would claim these layers were made by the flood, to which I agree. They then mockingly build up a straw man saying, so did the dinosaurs walk on the bottom of the ocean or something? No, you bonehead, these are tidal flats, with the footprints being made while the tides were receded. Plus, those numerous polystrate trees buried upside down, cutting through multiple layers of dinosaur tracks, would clearly indicate that the multiple layers of dinosaur tracks were not made season after season, but rather that the layers and thus the fossil dinosaur footprints that were made in catastrophic flood conditions. So I would like to turn the tables upon the foolish anti-creationists, but simultaneously use their foolishness to gently challenge my evolutionary friends. My evolutionary friends who truly do like true science, who enjoy learning, and like to search things out for themselves. My evolutionary friends who respectfully challenge me to prove my point, without condescension and mocking, and indeed, they will go and verify for themselves if what I say is true or not. So I challenge you all. Would you then agree that these layers were made by catastrophic conditions and not deep time? Of course you would. But then where is the deep time and long and slow geological processes? It's non-existent. Consequently, if there is no deep time, then there is no evolution, because evolution requires deep time. In fact, the deep time evidence has been non-existent for all of the rock layers we have examined thus far, which I might remind you includes tens of thousands of vertical feet of rock layers. But let's go way out east again, back to the Joggins Fossil Cliffs, because at the fossil cliffs we have a rather unique opportunity to have a direct comparison between slow and steady geological processes and catastrophic processes. It's unique here at Joggins because of the exceptionally high tides and the very high erosion rates caused by them. Let's take a look at this picture of the Joggins beaches taken at low tide. I'm way out there, standing on one of the reefs, and you can see the layers are all, tilted up on about a 20-degree or so angle, right? So those rock layers are composed of different materials. Hard sandstone, soft shales, soft and easily eroded layers of coal, etc. Because some of the layers are softer than the others, those softer layers get eroded away far faster than the harder layers. As a result, the harder layers wind up sticking up like this as reefs. This is what geologists call differential erosion. The layers are eroding differently. Now, this is a long and slow geological process in action today. Thankfully, it's very fast because of the exceptionally high tides. And so we can actually study the erosion rates and differential erosion in the layers. But now, let's take a look at the top of the cliffs. The exact same layers, but they've all been planed off flat. It's like some giant took a planer and scraped all the rocks down at once. There is no differential erosion. This planed surface is known in geology as a planation or penaplanation surface, and they are found all over the world. They are a mystery to deep time advocates. They are not a mystery to catastrophists who believe in a historic worldwide flood. Right off the bat, we can draw one radical conclusion. This was caused by long and slow geological processes. This planation surface was not caused by long and slow geological processes. In fact, I would contend there is only one thing that could cut that planation surface. A continent-sized sheet of fast-moving water. Water moving fast enough to hit what they call cavitation speed. You see, water has mass and is quite heavy. So it can't, take a corner very fast. So if it's moving very fast and say encounters a bump in an underwater surface, it will actually jump off that bump because it simply can't turn fast enough to stick to the surface of the bump. This creates a vacuum bubble, and the water gets sucked against the submarine surface, slamming against it with astonishing force that can literally pulverize steel. Sedimentary rock doesn't stand a chance. Water, seeking its own level and moving very, very fast as it left the continent, cut that planation surface. But that planation surface isn't just found at Joggins. As we will see in the next lecture, the entire eastern seaboard of Canada. And planation surfaces are literally found all over the world, and they all tell a tale of a global scale watery catastrophe.
Coming up in the next Complete Creation.
So, from the evidence at hand, we can draw a couple of conclusions. A huge, provincially sized sheet of water, at least 55 meters or 180 feet deep, moving at highway speeds, a minimum of 70 miles an hour or in excess of 110 kilometers an hour, ripped up rocks in Idaho, transporting them over 1,000 kilometers, planing off mountaintops in Alberta, and depositing these quartzite boulders. But notice there's this really annoying mountain range called the Rockies, right in between the origin point of the rocks and the destination in Alberta where those rocks were dropped off. So you've got two choices. Either the water went up and over the mountaintops at highway speeds, carrying huge boulders over 1,000 kilometers, or the Rocky Mountains had not yet risen up.
You can catch the entire series in a variety of ways. You can watch the show online at www.completecreation.org or www.genesisweek.com. You can also purchase the Complete Creation series in full high definition on Blu-ray or video on demand at completecreation.org, or support the Miracle Channel with a monthly tax-deductible donation and access the entire Complete Creation series in high definition through Corco, Miracle Channel's video on demand service. We need your support to keep this program on the air, so please pray for us. And if you wish to financially support the program, Canadians can make a tax-deductible donation to Core Ottawa, Canada North Post Office Box 72075, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, K2K2P4. Or you can make a donation via PayPal online at ianjuby.org/donations. And thank you for your support.